We finally made it. Deadpool and Wolverine is out in theaters now. And besides Dune Part 2, this was my most anticipated movie of the whole year. So I went the first night I could, Wednesday night in IMAX 3D with a packed audience. And we're gonna get into all the nitty gritty about this movie, including spoilers, what I liked most, what I liked the least about the movie. And at the very end, we're gonna rank the cameos in the film because there's quite a few. So here's your warning: if you haven't yet watched Deadpool and Wolverine, go and watch it in theaters on the biggest screen with the biggest crowd you can find, enjoy it, and then come back and we can talk about the insane cameos and things that happen in Deadpool and Wolverine. So here's your spoiler warning right now. And like I've said before in spoiler videos, if you've already seen Deadpool and Wolverine and now you're watching this, please do not be that guy who takes my video and starts sharing it to people you know haven't seen it in an attempt to ruin their day or their experience watching this movie. Please just be respectful to others. So let's get into everything spoiler related with Deadpool and Wolverine. I feel like Deadpool coming in now to the MCU and having this bigger sandbox to play with than just the Fox characters. Now he gets to play with everything Marvel that we've ever known. It only felt natural because we need a movie like this every now and then to remind us that not everything in these big action movies needs to be taken so serious. Hell, everything in the entertainment world can be made fun of. And I think Ryan Reynolds and the character have been such a lovely reminder of that with the first two films, and now having this larger canvas for Deadpool to, run all over is a blast. And that's exactly what this movie is. I had a really great time with Deadpool and Wolverine from that very opening scene. We open with Deadpool digging for Logan's remains, but finding that he's decayed into only an adamantium skeleton, and then tearing apart that skeleton and using it in his fight with the TVA. All while Bye 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 by NSYNC is playing in the background. Talk about a legendary opening credit sequence. And arguably, it might be my favorite part of the whole movie still, but that's not saying the rest isn't great. That it was just such a high bar that I was like, oh my god, this is tons of fun. If you've ever been in touch with popular culture, you've probably heard this song everywhere, but this movie manages to use it in a new and clever way that's really welcome, which I don't think it was able to do with You're the One That I Want from Grease, which is during the car fight between the two main characters. But besides that, the soundtrack is really good. The action scene with Like a Prayer by Madonna playing in the background, I mean, wow, that was gold. And I feel like this movie had a lot on its shoulders when it comes to delivering on expectations. You got the first X-Men movie set in the MCU, you got the multiverse, you got Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine after Logan for the first time. So on all those fronts, I think the movie really delivered, not to mention it looked really great visually. And when it comes to directing action scenes, Sean Levy is no David Leitch, but this is probably his best work when it comes to action movies, even with like the Ryan Reynolds movies that he did, Free Guy and The Atom Project. I think the look and feel here tops that. And though it's hard to say whether this is funnier than Deadpool 2, it's at least at that level. The jokes are at light speed. I'll get into some of them when we talk about the cameos, but man, I mean, there are some parts where I was just belly laughing, even when they just like play the Greatest Showman songs for a second during the car fight. I was really wondering how much they would fourth wall break Hugh Jackman himself, and they do it plenty, which one of my favorite parts is when they do that with the stars themselves. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are having such a great time in their buddy cop element, and it is really satisfying to watch these two invincible people who can regenerate whenever and have no control over their temper, just fail to get along. Emma Corrin was also in particular really good as Cassandra Nova. I know they make a lot of Mad Max references in the first act of the movie, but it genuinely felt like someone you would find in the wasteland and then give them Professor X's powers, and that would be Cassandra Nova. So Corrin is really chewing up the scenery, and whenever they're on screen with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, they never feel second to them, or they never feel like we just want to see what Deadpool or Wolverine have to say. We want to see this character really interact and grow and chew up the scenery, like I said. Matthew Macfadyen, also lots of fun. He just knows when to let out and be silly a little bit. Kind of disappointed they didn't make any Tom Wamsgans or Succession references. I mean, you referenced The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman. I mean, give the Succession fans what they want, I don't know. A man can dream. In terms of character development is where I think this movie is beneath Deadpool 2. If people do have their gripes with the plot of this movie, it's because it often takes a back seat to all the multiverse stuff and the action and the humor and the fourth wall breaks. And this is the one movie where I think I was totally fine with the plot taking a total backseat, because not only did the fan service really fulfill my theatrical experience, but so did the humor, and so did the making fun of superheroes in the MCU and so on. I think it more than makes up for that, even if it bothers you that Deadpool's character development isn't really substantial in this one. Like his whole breakup with Vanessa, I felt like they kind of threw in there just to say, oh yeah, by the way, we do still have a character arc for Deadpool. But compared to what he was going through in Deadpool 2, it just feels very last minute. After everything they went through, I just didn't feel that it was earned that they split up like that. It's fun to see Deadpool's extended friend, family, gang, whatever you want to call them, including Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Yukio, Colossus, Al, Peter, who's like the best in this movie. I would have loved to see Zazie Beetz as Domino even for a little bit, but that's also just because I absolutely love Zazie Beetz and would have loved to even see her have a line or two. Not sure why she wasn't around. But I'm guessing either she was busy or she's just a much more expensive actor these days and they needed to focus their budget on the more surprise actors. This variant of Wolverine is the reason any sort of character development in this movie works, because of his guilt over his failure to save the rest of the X-Men in his world. I like how Logan's death in Logan is still very much permanent, and this is a new Wolverine that we're just meeting for the first time, even though it's still very much Hugh Jackman in the flesh. I think that hopeless guilt that Wolverine is drowning in, and then that redemption he gets throughout the movie, also ties into the greater theme of the movie of second chances, because of these other superhero characters whose franchises were abruptly canceled, or maybe their last movie sucked, and now we get to see them, like you say, go out with a legacy and ending. So now it's time to rank the cameos of Deadpool and Wolverine. There were plenty in this movie, even more than there were in Multiverse of Madness, and only time will tell if they will hold up as strongly as seeing Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in the theater in Spider-Man No Way Home. But for now, this is how I feel about the different characters and both how exciting and rewarding to the story and the experience ultimately their cameos were. By the way, I'm counting down the ones who are significant in the movie. There are some characters who are more in the background or ones who are even in the trailer that I'm going to leave out, but let me know if there's any that I missed. At number 9 at the very bottom is Henry Cavill as a Wolverine variant. This was a fun little surprise as Deadpool is searching for the different Wolverines across multiverses for one that will actually hear him out and not kill him. And then one, he's like, from behind you almost look like Henry. And then he turns around and it's actually Henry Cavill. And it's a fun little moment. It's not like Henry Cavill was ever one of my favorite actors. It's fun to like think that they called him up and he suited up just for that one shot or two. And that whole montage is really enjoyable with the Power of Love playing. So seeing a bunch of Hugh Jackmans and then Henry Cavill in for a second is fun. But again, I think it was a brief moment that besides like a second of, oh, wow, they got him, it didn't do a crazy amount compared to some of the other people who end up showing up. So it would have been higher on the list if not for the other people who come in and show up. At number 8 is Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan. I really like seeing Happy whenever. He didn't do a crazy amount in this movie. It's a fun little scene to start off the film when Deadpool is trying to join the Avengers back in 2018, so right before Infinity War and the snap. And it's actually the only scene in the movie that technically takes place within the sacred timeline, or the main MCU timeline. But as cool as it is to know that Deadpool has made a trip into the main timeline right after the second movie's events, the scene I don't think did as much for the movie as it thinks it does later, just thematically. And Happy's scene in it is fun, but again, not one of my favorites compared to the other exciting people who show up. Number 7, I might be cheating a little bit for this one, but the Deadpool Corps. They show up in that great action scene with the Madonna song in the background, and they are just incredibly bloodthirsty and angry. And when Ladypool comes in, I remember thinking to myself, how amazing would this be if this was Blake Lively the whole time? And then the credits roll, and lo and behold, it was Blake Lively under the mask. I actually don't know if it was her acting or just providing the voice later, but either way, it's a great little appearance. Not to mention we had Nathan Fillion as like the decapitated skull Deadpool, and then Matthew McConaughey as Cowboy Deadpool. I love not just that whole long take action scene through the street and the bus, and how Canadian Deadpool just dies a really gratuitous death. But I think the funniest part for me in the whole movie is when Peter shows up and then everyone from the Deadpools just like respect them and let them pass peacefully. And Cowboy Deadpool is like, Peter's a goddamn legend. And Samurai Deadpool is like, Peter's son. That made me belly laugh. You guys don't even know. Also, shout out to Kidpool. That is one foul-mouthed child right there. Number 6 is Wunmi Masaku as Hunter B-23 from Loki. I always found it a bit weird in the trailers that Deadpool goes to the TVA, but like none of the same characters who are like the heads of the TVA are even mentioned or referenced or seen from the side. I am glad that it was her and not Owen Wilson as Mobius, but she's like very enjoyable and authoritative, and I love to see how she grew from just a, pruning TVA agent to someone who's actually in charge by the end of Loki season 2. And we get to see her roast Matthew McFadden and punish him a little bit at the end and interact with Deadpool and Wolverine themselves. And then also she's like, Peter, you look damn good in that suit, or whatever at the very end. I really enjoyed her whole appearance. Number 5 is Jennifer Garner as Elektra. This is not the Charlie Cox Daredevil version of Elektra, played by Elodie Yung, but this is the forgotten Fox version of Elektra, who not only was her ex-husband Ben Affleck Daredevil's lover in Daredevil, but then also got her own spin-off movie, Elektra, which I've never seen, but I heard is awful. But Garner is really enjoyable because I feel like she had this sort of longing in her performance as to, like I said, she wants an ending. She wants a proper legacy. She wants to go out on her own terms, even if she's in the void of the multiverse. It was really nice to see this A-list actor come in and play this character of hers really seriously, but with this touch of self-awareness. So I really like that overall. By the way, I love the little jab at Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck's divorce when Deadpool asks her where's Daredevil, and she says something like, he didn't work out, or he's not here anymore. So I thought that was great. That really made me laugh. Number 4 is Wesley Snipes as Blade. I was not expecting this. I don't even know if those movies are from Fox or not. I've seen Blade 1 and Blade 2, and I hated them both. But I've never seen Blade Trinity, and I heard that one was really bad. And again, sort of closed Wesley Snipes' time as Blade on a low. And this is also him sort of looking for a second chance and to go out on a high. He was super fun as this character in the movie, and when he sort of walks into that music, it's just such an enjoyable moment, and I really was not expecting it, so I just erupted in applause with the rest of the crowd when he came in. And he's super enjoyable in the action scenes too. Even in the first Blade movies that Wesley Snipes stars in, his reactions when he's like fighting henchmen and blocking them and defeating them are all really fun, and he plays into that again, so I really like that. Number 3 is, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, Channing Tatum as Gambit. As soon as that card came flying in, I was like, could it be Channing Tatum? Because we all know the stories of Channing Tatum being attached to play Gambit in a solo movie, and then Fox getting bought by Disney, so Disney canceled it. And so I was like, okay, it better be Channing Tatum. That would be awesome if they embraced that and gave him his proper moment as the hero instead of just bringing back Taylor Kitsch. Could you imagine if they just brought back Taylor Kitsch from X-Men Origins Wolverine? They didn't even bring back Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth. So it's like, imagine if they just brought back Taylor Kitsch. But as soon as Channing Tatum walked in, I was looking like Rocky Balboa in the theater, cheering for my guy finally getting his chance to play Gambit on screen. I don't know what his accent was even supposed to be, but he was so hilarious, and seeing his cards cause like massive destruction. Yeah, it was so delightful. This was like the ultimate form of redemption in the meta sense and the behind the scenes sense, and this movie really embraced that. Knowing sort of like what the fans hope to see in terms of this guy playing the character, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes of screen time. Number 2 is Daphne Keane as Laura, aka X-23. This is the only character in which the events from her previous appearances really make an impact, but I immediately cared for her as soon as she came in. It's nice to see her a little bit older and more in charge, which I thought was great, putting her as the leader of the group. But her conversation with Wolverine is a standout because she talks about how the prime Logan who died was a hero and saved her, and he was also an unlikely, sad sort of guy who ended up rising to the challenge, right? She says, "You're always the wrong guy." And I always wanted to see her do more. I was always rooting for her to make it out, which, you know, the other characters, I was like, yeah, they might die, but I was really hoping that Laura would just get a good ending in this movie, which she technically does because Deadpool asks B-23 to let them back in to their own worlds. So yeah, emotionally speaking, this was the most impactful and gripping of the cameos, and not one that I expected, but I really loved to see her. But at number 1 is the most entertaining of the performances and the most delightful, surprising, cool cameo of the bunch, which happens earlier on, and that's Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. I want to hear from you guys if you thought it was obvious already which character it was as soon as he lifted up his hood and revealed who the actor was. I think I already knew that it was definitely Human Torch because of the blue suit, and I knew they were not going to bring Chris Evans back as Captain America ever. But for Deadpool, it wasn't very obvious. The whole Avengers Assemble, but then the Flame On thing, that was really funny. And seeing him have a little bit of a fight with Pyro, because they're both fire-powered characters, was super cool. Best of all, Chris Evans does not take the part seriously at all. He's basically playing his character from Knives Out, but with superpowers, and I just enjoyed it so much. You could tell he's just down to come in and say whatever they want him to say. I'm sure he improv'd a little bit too, because he's a very talented comedic actor. And I loved his little back and forth with Emma Corrin right before he dies. And then, of course, the post-credits scene where it's revealed that he actually did that whole rant about Cassandra. I'm not going to try to recite it because it's a really long series of roasts. So yeah, that's my little spoiler talk of Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm not going to call it the best post-Endgame MCU movie. I don't want to go too much into hyperbole. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is still number 1 for me when it comes to post-Endgame MCU, and I don't think that's going to change for a long time. I would also put Guardians 3 at number 2, and then probably Spider-Man No Way Home. Maybe Shang-Chi over this one, but if so, definitely Deadpool and Wolverine next. I think it's better than Multiverse of Madness, probably, and then probably better than the rest as well. But let me know if there's any other surprises or laugh out loud moments or revelations that you think I should have touched on that I missed in this video, or any cameos that you would have changed in the ranking. And as always, stay tuned for more.